$130,000 secretly funneled into a shell company, a hidden deal with a powerful oil CEO, and a critical vote that altered the fate of the nation. In just the next few minutes, you'll witness Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett uncover a web of corruption so deep, it could end Marjorie Taylor Greene's career forever. What you're about to hear isn't just politics. It's a masterclass in how truth destroys lies when someone refuses to back down. But this story starts in the most unlikely place, a quiet hearing room where nobody expected fireworks. Under the high ceilings of a Capitol hearing room, something felt different that morning. Staffers shifted nervously in their chairs. Reporters scrolled through their phones absent-mindedly, expecting another forgettable hearing. No fireworks, no headlines, just another day of political theater in Washington. The cameras rolled on what everyone assumed would be routine questioning, the kind that fills C-SPAN hours but rarely makes news. But the moment Jasmine Crockett walked into that chamber, the atmosphere shifted like storm clouds gathering on a clear day. She didn't smile at the cameras, didn't wave to familiar faces. She moved with quiet precision, a sealed manila folder clutched in her hand and an expression that said she wasn't here to participate in the usual games. She was here to confront something much bigger. To most people in that room, Jasmine was just another Democrat, often interrupted, often dismissed, another voice trying to be heard above the constant noise of partisan politics. But today, her calm presence unsettled even the most seasoned political veterans. Across from her sat Marjorie Taylor Greene, a woman who'd built her entire career on being the loudest voice in any room, on deflecting criticism with pure force of personality and unwavering defiance. What Greene didn't know was that Jasmine had spent months quietly gathering evidence. Real evidence. The kind that doesn't care how loud you scream or how many social media followers you have. Bank records, flight logs, recorded phone calls, business registrations, a paper trail that told a story of corruption so clear and undeniable that no amount of political spin could bury it. This wasn't going to be another political theater show where both sides walk away claiming victory. This was an execution, methodical, precise, and absolutely devastating. And it all started with a single question about trust that would bring down one of the most controversial figures in modern politics. The silence in that hearing room had stretched to its breaking point, every breath seeming to wait for someone else to speak, until Jasmine Crockett finally leaned into the microphone. Her voice was low, steady, and undeniable, like someone about to tear the veil off a quiet betrayal that had been hiding in plain sight. "Thank you, Mr. Chairman," Jasmine said. Her tone calm, but beneath those simple words lay a firmness that didn't ask for attention. It demanded it. "I'd like to begin today by addressing something that strikes at the very heart of our responsibility as public servants. Trust." She paused, not for dramatic effect, but to ensure every single word would land with the weight it deserved. Her fingers didn't fidget with papers. Her posture didn't falter under the pressure of dozens of eyes watching her every move. She was completely still except for her eyes, locked forward, unwavering, focused with laser intensity on the truth she was about to reveal. "I believe that trust has been violated," she continued, her voice tightening just slightly, "by someone in this very room." The air truly changed then. A ripple moved across the chamber like electricity before a lightning strike. Chairs creaked as people shifted uncomfortably. Phone screens lowered as reporters looked up from their half-written notes. Even the most jaded political veterans could sense that something significant was about to unfold. Jasmine didn't name her target right away. She let the suspense live, let it build into something tangible that hung in the air like smoke. Then, without raising her voice, without theatrics or grandstanding, she said 5 words that would change everything. "I am referring to Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene." The name landed like a stone thrown through stained glass. You could feel the temperature in the room drop several degrees. Greene didn't react immediately, but her spine went rigid, her fingers curling around the edge of her desk like she needed something solid to grip while her world began to shake. Jasmine pressed forward with surgical precision. She opened the dark folder before her, each motion deliberate and controlled, as though she was removing the lock on a vault that had kept secrets hidden for far too long. From inside, she pulled out a single page, printed in plain black ink but charged with the kind of consequence that could end careers. She held the document up, making sure every camera in the room could capture it. "This document," she said, tapping the top corner twice with her finger, "is a summary of campaign expenditures filed with the Federal Election Commission." Her voice was louder now, not angry but absolutely unflinching. "It shows a total of $130,000 in campaign funds directed to a company called Oakstar Strategies, LLC. A few members of the committee exchanged worried glances. One aide in the back row began typing quickly on his laptop, probably trying to verify the information in real time. Still, Jasmine didn't raise her tone. She didn't need to. The strength was in the facts themselves. "Now here's where it gets troubling," she continued, placing the document gently on the desk like evidence in a criminal trial. "Oakstar Strategies has no website, no verifiable office address, no staff directory, no public record of clients or contracts. I personally called every phone number associated with this firm 3 times over the past week. 2 numbers were completely disconnected. The third led to a generic voicemail with no company name mentioned." She let the silence work for her, let the realization settle into every corner of that room like a slow-spreading stain. "A company that cannot be found," she said slowly, emphasizing each word, "was paid nearly $130,000 of donor money for consulting services. Consulting that no one can trace, from a company no one can verify, for work that no one can describe." The weight of Jasmine's first revelation had barely settled when Marjorie Taylor Greene surged forward, words already loaded and sharpened not by truth but by the fear that her carefully constructed walls were finally closing in around her. "You've got nothing but air," Greene snapped, her voice slicing through the chamber like a whip cracked too close to panic. She leaned toward her microphone with both hands gripping the table, trying to reclaim control through sheer force of volume and intimidation. "You're making this up. Conspiracy fiction. Lies. All of it." Her face was flushed now, not with righteous anger but with the unmistakable heat of someone whose secrets had just been dragged into the light. A few audible gasps murmured from the press section, but Jasmine remained perfectly still, unshaken by the outburst. She didn't speak right away. She just looked at Greene with the quiet clarity of someone who had already done her homework and knew that the answers wouldn't change no matter how much pressure was applied. Then she reached slowly, deliberately, for another document in her folder, her fingers as calm as if time had slowed down for her alone. "Congresswoman," she said, her voice perfectly measured and controlled, "what I have here isn't speculation. It's not hearsay. It's your filings, your signature, and your silence until today that makes it matter." She laid a new page flat on the table, turning it just enough for everyone to see the official letterhead. "This document details a reimbursement of $11,400, approved for a trip to Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. The purpose listed, strategy meeting." Jasmine looked back up, her eyes steady and her voice unwavering. And yet there was no registered meeting, no public agenda, no guest list, no staff flights logged. Just 2 names on a private jet manifest, yours and your former campaign director. Her words felt like footsteps in a hallway you didn't know someone else was walking down, each revelation opening another door to expose what had been hidden behind it. "That resort," she continued, her tone remaining calm but cutting, "cost $1,600 per night. The spa packages you personally approved, $890, charged under miscellaneous services. And the room service tab," she glanced down briefly, almost casually, "over $400 in premium alcohol, specifically labeled as team morale expenses." Greene's hands twitched involuntarily. "That trip was cleared," she barked, her voice wobbling now as cracks formed beneath the surface of her defiance. "I don't answer to your narrative." But no one on the committee dais backed her up. No one jumped to her rescue or offered support. The silence from her own party was deafening. Jasmine stayed composed, like a surgeon with a scalpel already in motion, knowing exactly where each cut needed to be made. "This isn't my narrative, Congresswoman," she said quietly but with deadly precision. "These are your numbers, your labels, your campaign account funding private luxuries under the pretense of public duty." She pushed the paper forward, slow and controlled, toward the committee clerk. "And if you don't want the public to believe what's printed here in black and white, I suggest you tell them what information is missing, because I already know the answer to that question too." But just as the shock from the luxury trip revelation was settling into the minds of everyone in that room, Jasmine reached for a second file, one marked not just by numbers but by voices, actual recorded conversations that would move the scandal from financial impropriety into something much darker and more personal. Jasmine didn't raise her hand or clear her throat for attention. She simply unfolded the second file and looked out at the committee as if bracing them for an impact that would shake the very foundations of trust in government. "What I'm about to present next," she said, her voice low but cutting through the tension like a blade, "moves beyond questionable reimbursements. It involves political money being quietly funneled into personal real estate through a name most of us have never heard, but one that leads directly back to this chamber." She held up a new page, white paper, black ink, but the tension it carried was unmistakable and heavy. "I have here verified transcripts of 2 recorded phone calls between a senior aide in Representative Green's office and a financial go-between. One call took place on March 9th of last year, the second on July 15th. Both were obtained legally, reviewed by 2 independent analysts, and authenticated before submission to this committee." Her tone was matter-of-fact, but the silence in the room was anything but calm. Every person present could sense they were about to hear something that would change everything. She looked down, unfolded the page slowly, and began to read in a clear, steady voice. "In the March 9th recording, Green's aide says, and I quote exactly, 'We'll move $20K from Freedom Rising to Bay Rise LLC. It's clean. We need it for the beach house. She's got contractors waiting.'" Jasmine looked up again, and this time the pause wasn't for dramatic effect. It was to let the weight of that direct quote settle into every corner of the room. There was no interpretation needed, no speculation required. Just a direct quote implicating campaign money, a shell company, and property that didn't belong to the campaign or serve the public interest. The moment crackled with electricity. Staffers froze mid-typing. Even Green stopped her constant fidgeting and defensive posturing. With deliberate precision, Jasmine slid the next document across the table, her fingers steady as she prepared to reveal not just an accusation, but a solid, undeniable trail of corruption that led directly to Green's family. "This isn't a theory, Congresswoman," Jasmine said, her gaze never leaving Green's increasingly pale face. "This is documented fact. Bay Rise LLC is owned by Ronald Ederton, your husband's brother-in-law. This is the same company that received those $20,000 despite having no legitimate business purpose. And this," she added, producing another document, "is the bank record showing the wire transfer was immediately flagged for potential fraud, then quietly buried without investigation." Green's lips trembled, but no words came out. For the first time in her political career, she was truly speechless. Within minutes of Jasmine's final devastating words, something unprecedented began happening outside the walls of that Capitol hearing room. The footage exploded across every conceivable digital platform like wildfire spreading through dry grassland. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, 15-second clips capturing not just the evidence but the raw power of truth delivered with surgical precision began appearing faster than anyone could count them. The hashtag #ReceiptStorm trended worldwide within the first hour. The image of Marjorie Taylor Greene visibly rattled, her face flushed with panic and her hands trembling as she gripped her desk, became the centerpiece of every post, every meme, every news segment. It was as if the video had taken on a life of its own, no longer just footage from a congressional hearing but a living, breathing symbol of accountability finally catching up with corruption. But this wasn't just viral content created for entertainment. It was a genuine cultural moment that transcended typical political boundaries. People who had never followed politics before, who couldn't tell you the difference between a senator and a representative, found themselves part of an enormous conversation. They were sharing clips with friends, family members, complete strangers online, all united by the simple power of watching someone finally stand up to corruption without flinching. The contrast was stark and impossible to ignore. Jasmine's calm, methodical confidence versus Green's increasingly desperate rage and denial. Even conservative media figures found themselves struggling to defend the indefensible. Fox News veteran Harold Miles didn't mince words during his primetime segment. "I don't care who's right politically here," he said, looking directly into the camera with the gravity of someone who had covered politics for decades. "What I witnessed today isn't a political attack. It's a data dissection. A surgical strike on corruption using facts and evidence." He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "Anyone trying to call this a witch hunt is deliberately ignoring the numbers, the bank records, the documented phone calls. The data doesn't lie, folks. You simply cannot talk your way out of this level of evidence." His interview was shared across news outlets far beyond his usual audience, reaching people who had never watched Fox News before but respected his reputation for straight reporting. From small-town diners to big-city coffee shops, the conversation was the same everywhere. In an Ohio diner, two retired teachers watched the coverage replay on the restaurant's television. One leaned forward, shaking his head in amazement. "She didn't have to yell or scream. She just calmly showed us the truth, piece by piece." The other nodded in agreement. "This is exactly the kind of honesty and backbone we need more of in Washington." Across the country, that sentiment was being echoed by farmers, doctors, factory workers, students, people from every walk of life expressing the same basic reaction. The fallout from Jasmine's methodical destruction of Green's credibility was swift, merciless, and comprehensive. Within 72 hours of that hearing, the House Ethics Committee quietly issued a preliminary notice that would change everything. They were opening a formal investigation into Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene's campaign finance practices and potential conflicts of interest. There was no fanfare, no dramatic press conference, just a simple memorandum that landed like a nuclear bomb in the world of Washington politics. Each committee member was required to review the extensive evidence that Representative Jasmine Crockett had meticulously presented. The message was crystal clear. The stakes had suddenly become much higher than anyone had anticipated. The financial support that forms the lifeblood of any political campaign began to evaporate almost immediately. Three major donors whose backing had been crucial to Greene's rise and influence quietly pulled their support within days of the hearing. Their decisions to withdraw were swift and deliberate, clearly calculated moves to distance themselves from the growing scandal. One of them, a well-known real estate magnate with deep pockets and deeper political connections, posted a public statement on LinkedIn that was impossible to misinterpret. "We cannot in good conscience continue to support actions that fundamentally lack transparency and integrity. We do not condone shady financial dealings in any form, regardless of political affiliation." The words cut like a knife, serving as much as a public rebuke of Greene as they were an act of calculated self-preservation. The tide had shifted dramatically, and Greene was no longer seen as the reliable, trustworthy ally that powerful figures had once believed her to be. Perhaps even more telling was the deafening silence from Greene's Republican colleagues. These were the same voices that had once enthusiastically called her a fearless fighter for conservative values and the forgotten American people. But now, when asked directly about the unfolding scandal, they avoided cameras, offered no public defense, and seemed to vanish whenever reporters approached with questions about Greene's conduct. The silence spoke volumes about how quickly political loyalty can evaporate when the evidence becomes too overwhelming to spin or dismiss. Inside the secretive confines of Greene's campaign war room, the cracks in her once formidable defense became painfully evident. The tension in that room was suffocating as her few remaining advisors tried desperately to salvage what they could from the wreckage of her reputation. Greene, whose ability to rage and deflect criticism had carried her through countless previous controversies, found herself facing something entirely new and terrifying, a situation where her usual tactics were completely powerless. She threw a thick stack of campaign files onto the conference table, the papers scattering across the polished surface with a sharp slap that punctuated her growing desperation. "They think I'm going to apologize?" she hissed, her voice low but filled with venom. "They'll have to drag me out of this seat with their claws first." Her longtime lawyer, who had navigated her through numerous scandals and investigations, entered the room quietly. When she looked up at him with desperation in her eyes and asked, "How much of a real chance do I have here?" His long pause said everything. With the level of documentation Crockett presented, he finally said, "You're lucky if you only lose your seat. If you're unlucky." He trailed off, but the implication hung in the air like a death sentence. What you've just heard isn't really a story about Democrats versus Republicans, or liberal versus conservative ideology. It's not about political parties fighting for power or control of Congress. This is about something much more fundamental and important. The raw power of truth when it's delivered by someone who absolutely refuses to back down, even when facing the most intimidating opposition. Jasmine Crockett didn't need to shout or grandstand to make her point. She didn't need viral soundbites, manufactured drama, or social media theatrics to get attention. She had something far more powerful and lasting: facts, hard evidence, and the unshakable conviction that the American people deserve so much better than corruption disguised as public service. In a world absolutely drowning in noise, truth still matters. In an age of endless political spin and calculated deception, evidence still speaks louder than empty rhetoric. And when someone finally has the courage to stand up and say enough is enough, even the strongest walls of corruption and cover-up can come tumbling down like a house of cards. Marjorie Taylor Greene thought she was completely untouchable, protected by fierce loyalty, political fear, and the assumption that she could always shout her way out of trouble. She forgot one crucial thing. Sunlight really is the best disinfectant, and Jasmine Crockett brought a floodlight to illuminate the darkness that had been hiding the truth for far too long. The question moving forward isn't whether corruption exists in our political system. We all know it does. The real question is whether we as citizens will continue to tolerate it, excuse it, or look the other way when it's exposed. Jasmine showed us through her actions that we absolutely don't have to accept it. Her methodical, fearless approach proved that one person armed with truth and unwavering determination can still make a difference, can still hold the powerful accountable, and can still fight for the integrity that our democracy desperately needs to survive and thrive. If this story moved you, if it inspired you, or if it made you angry about the state of our political system, drop a comment below and tell us what moment hit you the hardest. Like this video if you believe accountability still matters, subscribe for more stories that expose the truth, and hit that notification bell, because the fight for honesty and integrity never stops.